which I'm addressing school leaders is, I think, really pertinent to the extent to which we can address the education and the achievements of disadvantaged young people in this country. Because if I said to you, or if I said to Michael Gove, or if I said to Tristram Hunt, or anybody on the political spectrum, what are your top priorities for our schools in this country? I think you would probably say raising achievement and closing the gap. And so it's not an issue of in a sense, a political dispute, but what it does do is play to our values and our moral purpose as school leaders. And that seems to me to be something that underpins the way in which we approach the spending of pupil premium money to effectively raise the attainment of disadvantaged young people. Now, the question is, what gaps have you got in your school? And how are you going to prioritise them? Your gaps might be between disadvantaged youngsters and others. That's what you're getting the pupil premium for. Between looked after children and others, you get a pupil premium even greater for that. And the challenge with looked after children very often is much greater still. You may be concerned about your gender gap, or the gap between the achievement of different ethnic minorities. The question is, how are you going to prioritise your work in closing those different gaps? And as you know, as you can imagine, there are two ways to close a gap between those who achieve well and those who don't. One is to raise the achievement of the youngsters down there, and the other one, of course, is to lower the achievement of those down there. And there are a couple of local authorities in the country that have closed the gap that way, unfortunately. What we've got to do, it seems to me, is to concentrate on raising the attainment. And so I don't tend to talk about closing the gap, I tend to talk about raising attainment of free school meals youngsters, pupil premium youngsters, and then frankly, the gap will look after itself. And the ambition that I offer you, the ambition that I would want you to share with your middle leaders and with your staff, is to make your school one of the, at the moment, 15% of schools in the country where the achievement of free school meals youngsters is above the national average for the achievement of all youngsters. And that seems to me to be a really good ambition for you to hold for your pupil premium youngsters. And I think you can use the curriculum actually to help you to do that. I think you can use evidence, and I'll say something about that in just a second, evidence of what works in a way that's not really been available to us, I think, in education. But there is some crucially good evidence available on the pupil premium, effective use of the pupil premium. And finally, when you're thinking about the focus for the pupil premium policy, never, never, never lose the focus on the quality of teaching and learning. And the reason I say that, particularly in relation to pupil premium youngsters, is that if you have excellent teaching in your school, there is a clear evidence that that disproportionately benefits disadvantaged children. And equally, if you have poor teaching in your school, that disproportionately disadvantages deprived young people. And you can see why that is. They don't get the extra help at home, if you like, to compensate for bad teaching. So focusing on the quality of teaching and learning in your school, through your senior leaders, through your middle leaders, actually of itself will contribute to closing the gap, of itself will contribute to raising attainment of free school meals youngsters. And what strategies you're going to adopt to do that, I offer you 3 different ways, and the slides aren't there, but the slides are in your pack, and I'm sure that you will get an electronic copy of the slides afterwards if you want them, because yes, you will, good, thank you. You can click on the links. 3 sources of evidence I want you to use to address this pupil premium agenda. 1, find out what's happening out there. Get out there and find the excellent schools that are doing a really good job with pupil premium in narrowing the gap. I'll give you just one example not too far away from here. Roundhay School in Leeds, doing a fantastic job in closing the gap. They have actually, what's in this little booklet which they produced for a conference I went to, actually is on their website, roundhayschool.org.uk. Have a look at it. They not only show you what strategies they use, but they show you how that has closed the gap from 37% to 31% to 14% over a 3-year period in a challenging school in Leeds. A really good example. There are lots of other examples around the country. Secondly, make good use of the Sutton Trust Education Endowment Foundation Toolkit. Now that doesn't solve the problem for you, but what it does, it provides a huge amount of evidence on 30 odd different strategies that you can use on Pupil Premium, and if you click on those strategies, you go in behind it, it's very, very easy to use. You will see how to do that really, really well. And you will see, incidentally, that the strategies that make the most difference, things like good feedback, actually are good teaching and learning strategies. And that's my point about focusing on the quality of teaching and learning and using Pupil Premium money to help you to do that. And thirdly, some really good Ofsted reports. I'll say it again, Mike. Some really good Ofsted reports, which I know you read at bedtime reading. But the one that I would particularly ask you to focus on is the February 13 Ofsted report on Pupil Premium, where there's a really good list of successful strategies, successful things that schools that are successful in the use of the Pupil Premium are doing, and then a list of less successful ones too. And I think there's another report coming out later this month, I think, or fairly soon anyway, about Pupil Premium from Ofsted. So those three sources of evidence: excellent practice in other schools, the toolkit, and that Ofsted report. And the Ofsted report, Unseen Children, of course, is an inspiring read about the education of disadvantaged young people in this country. So use those evidence, use those strategies, think about what you're going to do in your school, and then think about, just stand back from the strategies that you're using at the moment. How many of them are whole school strategies? How many of them are strategies on individual pupils? How many are long-term, year 11 focused? How many are, sorry, short-term, year 11 focused? How many are longer-term? Is the balance of these things right? How many of them are teaching and learning strategies? How many pastoral strategies? How many raising aspiration strategies? So, do you feel the balance is right? And then adjust the balance of those strategies according to what you think will be most effective. And never lose the focus on teaching and learning, and never lose the focus on the individual pupil. It's the point that Mike was making. Drill down into that data to make sure that every one of your Pupil Premium eligible youngsters is doing well. Because what you've got to do is demonstrate that the £2.5 billion coming into the education budgets for Pupil Premium is used effectively to make an impact. And that's what you're being held to account for. Not how you use it, but what impact you make with it. And you'll find a slide in my presentation there which describes for you how to create the audit trail that you need to create on your website, not just for inspectors, but actually for parents as well, and indeed for your own decision making between the money coming in and the impact that you make with it. So there we are. I think you can use curriculum freedoms as well to really help disadvantaged youngsters if you build up their skills as well as their knowledge. But I can't underestimate the importance of this agenda. Not only to make sure that the Treasury goes on giving us £2.5 billion, but because it absolutely plays to the moral purpose of what you and I came into teaching to do.